People here are members of the Film Society. Raise your hand. Thank you for your support. For those of you who are not members, I want to encourage you to check out the opportunity to become a member. You get exclusive ticket discounts and access to tickets for the upcoming New York Film Festival, among many other benefits. Speaking of the New York Film Festival, passes and packages are on sale right now for the New York Film Festival this fall. We have a few upcoming events. I'm going to tell you about a free summer talk we haven't even announced yet. I'm telling you first. On Thursday, June 23rd, Mr. Nicholas Winding Refn will be here. Yeah, wow, there's a lot of yeah. Nicholas will be here for a talk, and that was Thursday, June 23rd, just like this, free event. So please join us for that. Sign up for our newsletter and visit our website, follow us on social media for more information. Our Human Rights Watch Film Festival starts this Friday, as well as the powerful documentary from the New York Film Festival last year called The Witness. It opens here on Friday. Thank you to our Film Society Talks sponsor, HBO, as well as our dedicated members and patrons. Like I said, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, sign up for our newsletter, follow us at filmlink.org to get all the information. We're going to take a look right now at the trailer for De Palma, and then my colleague Ken Jones, director of the New York Film Festival, will be here to moderate our evening conversation. So enjoy the trailer and enjoy that.
You've got to realize you're being criticized against the fashion of the day. And when the fashion changes, everybody forgets about that. Being a director is being a watcher. We have a lot of egos in the room, and you have to sort of watch how they interact with each other. There was Marty and I, then there was George and Francis and Stephen. What we did in our generation will never be duplicated. You're battling a very difficult system, and all the values of that system are the opposite of what goes into making original good movies. The problem of working in the Hollywood system is you can lose your way. My movies tend to upset people a lot, so you can imagine the things they're trying to take out of my movies. I did grow up in an operating room. I saw a lot of blood. I was battling with the ratings board, and I kept on getting excess, and then I said, absolutely, I'm not changing that anymore. And what I did that really drove them all crazy is that I put everything back in. It's all X to me. These things, they make perfect logical sense to you, and then you put them in front of an audience, they go, holy cow.
Hi everybody. Here we go. I've seen this film a few times. I've loved it every minute of it, every time I've seen it, and I look forward to seeing it again. It's a really passionate exploration of the art of cinema through the lens of a great director, and it got me going back and looking at those films again, and boy, was that an experience. I'm really pleased to be doing this conversation, and it's always a pleasure to welcome Noah Baumbach and Jake Paltrow. Brian is en route from, yeah, actually, we'll leave it for Brian. So imagine he's here. Did you guys have to do any convincing to get Brian to agree to do this movie?
We thought we were going to, but he said yes right instantly.
Yeah. We set it up quickly enough so that he couldn't change his mind.
Right.
And 1 week later we shot.
Did you know right away what kind of movie you were making? In other words, just
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and we had the idea of also, although I think I wasn't entirely sure how it would work, but that we had the idea that we would take our voices out also.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would be, in a way, I feel like we didn't even necessarily know it would be a full movie. Right? It was sort of selfishly archived for us, and it's coming out of these dinners that we had with Brian for several years, thinking, if you would talk to us on camera, we could talk.
Right. And just to orient everyone, this is a long friendship between the three of you.
Yeah, I mean, that was now 20 years.
Yeah, I've known him like 20 years now. We're old friends. And I'd say, but like the group, and Jake and I became friends separately, Jake and Brian became friends separately, and then I would say it's been probably about 10 years that we've sort of all like hung out as a group.
Mm-hmm. And he looks at cuts of your movies and
yeah, I mean, I think, if Brian were here, he would say that he misses having a kind of coterie of directors that he feels close to, that he can bounce ideas off of, and for us, I think we gravitated to that exact kind of, thing. I think it can be lonely in a way if you particularly if you write and direct, you don't, making movies, and it's always a kind of, I always find like when I even, meet directors who I don't even like that much, I always enjoy talking to them because I feel like there is a kind of shared experience no matter what.
Yeah.
And then, but then you make that person Brian or Jake or, Wes or, people that we, it becomes, it's a, we all have a kind of friendship beyond that, but it is definitely the kind of, key element of our conversations is movies, if there are movies or other people's movies.
well, it's interesting that you bring up the coterie of filmmakers that he comes out of, because that's, of course, new Hollywood filmmakers, and it's Martin Scorsese, Francis Coppola, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Paul Schrader, and one of the undercurrents of this movie is the fact that that moment in movie making, which we all kind of took for granted when it was around, was a blip. It was a kind of an aberration, and allowed for a lot of great films to be made.
Yeah, and in many cases made in the system, which allowed, they would have found ways to make them anyway, I'm sure, but that they were given, as Brian says in the movie, that they were given all these tools to kind of do their own things, and have a shot, at wide distribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe it'd be a good idea to, let me just ask the audience, how many people have seen the film? Okay. Well, he lives in the end, I'll say that. Let's start with a clip to get the ball rolling, and maybe Brian will roll in. We can just do the first clip with you.
Was the whole Warner Brothers youth group. Schrader was out there. Schrader was a critic. He brought me the script of Taxi Driver. I didn't think it was commercial, but it was extraordinary. And I thought it was more to Marty's taste. That was basically our group. And we were all very supportive of each other and passing the scripts back and forth and looking at each other's movies. And what we did in our generation will never be duplicated. We were able to get into the studio system and use all that stuff in order to make some pretty incredible movies before the businessmen took over again.
It's interesting that he's talking about making pretty incredible movies, and then you end on the poster of Star Wars, because that's one of the films that put the businessmen in the driver's seat, right?
Which Brian, I think, contributed to the crawl.
Yes, it did. Yeah, which is in the film. Right? Can you? Yeah, maybe you should just explain.
Oh, just the beginning of Star Wars. I think they all, when the story goes.
Yeah.
We had heard, we may know this or not. They watched the rough cut of Star Wars, and I think everybody's very encouraging. And this is our experience of Brian as well. Tough. Brian was sort of like, you got to wrap up, you have to let us know what we're experiencing before we sort of experience where's this world and where it's all happening. And then I guess they sat down together and started sort of working out that crawl that starts the original Star Wars, just to oriented with galaxies.
Paul Schrader told me that when he saw the movie, he thought, well, it's not going to make it time, but at least he got that out of the system. There's a very, very specific relation, throughout the film to Hitchcock, and anyone who knows Brian's work knows that, that's a very close relationship. I feel that he's unique among filmmakers in the sense that he speaks of Hitchcock as if he were a separate language. That it's almost like he's the core of cinema as opposed to a filmmaker. It's almost like he's discovered the secret language of cinema. He's almost like a moon to Hitchcock's planet. Does that seem accurate to you?
I mean, yeah, I think for us that was sort of the big discovery of this experience with Brian, and maybe didn't even fully realize it until the movie was cut together, that's the big takeaway, that this whole visual storytelling first concept that's coming out of Hitchcock, is a language. And I think you said it, one of the things was like, it's available to anybody. In a way, Brian consistently works within this very specific language, where other people have, made movies in like a Hitchcock style, or maybe once or something. Not that all of Brian's movies are Hitchcockian, but he is using that language to make these movies. And I think for Noah, when we got to the end of editing the movie, like that was the crystallization. Like that was the thing that's like, oh, it is this, and it makes total sense. Even though it's such a big concept, and that was the thing that's probably most exciting to us.
A visual language in the sense that everything is emotionalized and tied to the lives of the characters, and that you can understand everything without listening to the dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think so. What maybe we all sort of, the shorthand of what we think is Hitchcockian is in some ways that Brian obviously borrowed certain aspects of that too. A lot of the sort of the femme fatale idea, and I suppose some of the subject matter too. You can cross-reference with Hitchcock, but in a way that's not what's so interesting about it. I think that's what Jake is saying too. Is that it is like it's a language beyond that. So the movies that he made. I mean, the 80s, I feel like Brian sort of spawned in the 80s this whole idea of like these movies that were all sort of taking the wrong things. There were so many movies like Final Analysis and, I mean, the Verhovens were
Still with the Night.
there were a lot of these erotic thrillers that were kind of coming on the heels of Brian. In some ways after Brian even sort of branched out and started doing Scarface and other Casualties of War. But I think a lot of those movies, it's not what we're talking about. It's not.
Right.
It's not.
It's a very different orientation.
Yeah, and I think it gets misinterpreted a lot, and that is, I think, what I think even misinterpreted by us. I think with Brian, he's very articulate about it at the end, and also really owns it towards the end of the movie, where he talks about it being a language, and that he really feels like he's the only person who's really using it now.
Mm-hmm. I was really struck going back and looking at the work how much he is tuned into the plight of the underdog. That's something that really runs throughout the work, and it's very moving, like something blown out and tries to kill.
Yeah, I think, and the sort of flip side of that is the what power does to people.
Yeah.
Which is also I guess an observation he makes in the movie, which I hadn't quite thought about. When you think of like even Bonfire and Scarface and Casualties of War, and they're really about abuse of power.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them.
Mm-hmm. And he's working within, he's working in the system where he's responsible for enormous amounts of money and dealing with people that are wielding incredible power. So it's all part of the fabric of the making of the movies too.
Right.
But in a way, that's where like the De Palma thing that we think of is it's like protected by the personal storytelling aspect of it, even on something that is like seemingly not, seemingly for hire, whatever that means, or like a script he didn't write. Or you think of like I think it's
The Untouchables.
Totally The Untouchables and Casualties of War as well. I think like those are because they're like I think if you're working within a primary interest in terms of subject matter, something like that is as personal as writing, the sort of approximation of your family life.
Mm-hmm.
Truffaut movie, and also, And Brian's done that so consistently, so beautifully to working inside. It's like that thing that he can't get off his mind.
Yes.
At the time he's doing it.
Let's go to the Carrie Club.
Carrie came to me in the steam room over on 12th Street, where a writer friend of mine suggested this book by Stephen King called Carrie. I discovered it was a United Artists. Mike Mataboy was head of the studio. He knew who I was and liked my movies, and that's how I got the job. Larry Cohen had written the script. It was in pretty good shape, but I got rid of the brackets immediately, and it was all told Sue Snell was being interrogated, and it's all done in flashbacks about what happened. We kept on coming in with a budget of $1.8 million, and they said, we're not making it $1.8 million. It's got to be $1.6 million. And I said, you know, just like my Get to Know Your Rabbit experience, I said, guys, that's what it costs. It's $1.8 million. And they said, fine. And then they started moving the furniture out of my office. The movie had been canceled. So I went home that weekend and thought about it, and I somehow came back and said, you know what, I've been thinking about it, move this and change this around. Maybe we can do it for $1.6 million. And they said, great, it's a go. And of course it cost $1.8 million.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brian De Palma. Perfect timing. Those kind of conversations happen.
Hi.
Our greetings. We told them.
Yeah. Can you? Let's introduce yourself.
Oh, no. They don't want it. They want to hear you talk. They don't want to hear me.
Stand up for a second.
Start greeting.
Also, be my baby. I am so happy. I have such a joyous experience of working with you, and I hope that you did too. But it was so much fun, and to do these movies that were done on short ends and are so wonderful today. And I love working with you, Brian. I love you so. Thank you for. Nice to see you. Thank you for making this movie.
Those kinds of conversations happen a lot. I need 1.8 million. We're only going to give you 1.6 million. What's that about?
Lying.
Who's lying?
Well, you never tell. It's very ironic because if you tell them the truth, they don't believe you. So you might as well lie. I mean, I said once to my agent when I was going in for a budget meeting, you know, I could make this movie for $1 million or $40 million. It'll be a little different, but I still can do it. And he looked at me and says, don't say that.
So it's all about leverage, maintaining your leverage. Right?
Well, I mean, everybody's used to, you know, saying one thing and it's some, you know, you ever renovated a house, they tell you how much it's going to cost and it costs a little more. Movies are very much like that.
We were, before you got here, Brian, we were just talking about the distinction between the scripts that you wrote yourself and projects that came to you. Did they feel different in your mind as you look back on them now?
No, I always liked working with other people's material.
Yeah.
It got me away from the particular ideas I had, and so they could mature and maybe I'll get a better idea. But I worked with some great writers, so there were terrific screenplays. So it's good to just go out and direct.
Yeah. But as opposed to something like Casualties of War, which is a project, a real passion project that you took a long time trying to go.
Yeah, but that took like 20 years to get made, and I only got it made because of the success of the Untouchables, nobody wanted to make the picture.
Mhm.
You know, and it was, you know, so much of this business is luck.
Mhm.
You know, Dawn Steele hadn't left Paramount and gone over to Columbia and wanted a high prestige project, and happened to be, she ran Michael Fox's company. All these things sort of fell in when Ned Tannen and Paramount said, I'm not making this picture, it's depressing. So, fortunately, Dawn saw the greatness in it, and she got Michael to do it. And that's what got the picture made.
Because he was a big star at the time.
Yes.
But that one of the things that is very much a part of this movie, which is really refreshing, frank about the movie business, is the luck aspect. And there's the story where you were going to do Prince of the City, and Sidney Lumet was going to do Scarface, and as chance would have it, everything flipped. Right?
Well,
I didn't find that, right?
I worked for over a year with David Ray on the script of Prince of the City, and suddenly Sidney got interested in the project.
Yeah, I don't remember, it just happened.
Got interested in the project, and he had a screenwriter who was also interested in writing it. He had very good relations with the UA executives. So what ultimately happened was the project was stolen from him. I mean, it was fired, and Sidney and his writer came in, and they took the project over, which was a very depressing thing to happen, because David and I worked so hard on it. And irony of ironies was, when I walked away from Scarface, because I couldn't really work out my relationship with the producer and Al, it was a little confusing, so I walked away from him. Sidney came in and developed a script with Oliver, which was the whole Cuban thing. My script was basically, when I was working on with David, was, like a period gangster picture.
The remake of the Hawks movie.
Yeah, remake of the Hawks movie. But Sidney came in and got this idea with Oliver, and they did the whole Mariolito, Cubans coming over into Florida, and wrote an extraordinary script that Sidney didn't think was political enough.
Mm-hmm.
So Bregman said, well, I'm going to go back to De Palma, and that's what he did. So Sidney wound up with Prince of the City, and I wound up with Scarface. How about that?
Let's go to that Mission Impossible clip.
Again, it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time. Mike Ovitz called me up and said, "You interested in doing Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise?" I said, "Are you kidding? Of course." Because I was determined to make a huge hit. And I said, with Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, I'm ready. So this was a situation where whatever Tom wanted to do, they would make. They didn't care. They just wanted to make Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. Tom, on the other hand, of course, his first picture he's producing, wanted it to be exactly right. So I got a hold of David Koepp, who wrote Carlito's Way, to do the script. When we got through the David Koepp script, and they liked the script, Tom, of course, he had character things that were bothering him, he wasn't happy with. I said, Tom, you've got to walk into Sherry's office with me and say you want to make this movie or we're going nowhere. And I finally got him to say yes, he would make this script. The next phone call I got the next morning was a call from Paula, and she said, the good news is we're a go picture. The bad news is we're firing David Koepp and we're bringing on Robert Towne. Tom felt that Towne could bring some character things to it. Well, how do you convey this to your pal?
Cliffhanger. You have to see the movie. Mission Impossible marked maybe the end of your Hollywood. Snake Eyes actually, right?
No. Mission to Mars.
Mission to Mars. Okay. All right.
That far away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did you Was that a wistful goodbye to Hollywood, or was it a?
Well, Mission to Mars was sort of it, because I'd never made a picture that expensive. It was $100 million. And it was started with one executive who, of course, as soon as he made the picture go, left the company.
Yeah.
So now you're in a situation with executives that didn't give a go to the picture. Do they really want to make it? They don't like stuff that was given a go by a prior regime, so they're not too enthusiastic. And we're dealing with a big, expensive movie. And I came into it because the original director had a budget of $120 million, and they said, I can't make it for that. So they said, can you make it for $100 million? I said, sure. And what happened ultimately, and I mean, you know, I was a science geek. You know, I used to build computers. I went to see, you know, Destination Moon 27 times when I was a kid. So this was a dream for me. I mean, going to Mars. So, and I came up with, I thought, a very good idea to title together with The Face of Mars. But the problem was that, you know, I had a lot of pressure. See, the problem with these big pictures are these special effects shots cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when you're trying to cut the budget, you say, well, you got, you know, 30 shots here, can you cut them in half? Well, of course you can cut them in half, but will it be that effective? You know, and that was the problem I was having with the Mission to Mars, because you need a real spectacular ending, and they kept on saying, well, can you do it with less, can you do it with less? And I didn't really have enough of those shots in order to make it fly at the end, but I did the best with what I had. And I just said to myself, I don't want to make movies like this. I'm fighting with the executives. $100 million to make a movie. It's insane. And that's when I decided to go to Europe.
Yeah. Because as you say in the movie, it's the executives and the people with money, they're not looking out for the glory of the art of cinema.
What?
No, something you say in the movie, they are not interested in, you know, furthering the art of cinema.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're interested in making money.
Yeah, well, the myth persists, let's say, you know. Before you got here, we were talking about the fact that when Jake and Noah asked you if you were interested in doing this movie, you immediately said yes. Is that your memory of it?
Which one?
This one, this documentary.
Yes, because as you see in the movie, I was disappointed.
Sidney Lumet dropped out.
No, I was disappointed with the reception of Carlito's Way. I don't know why I didn't. Did I say it in the movie?
Which part?
About the part about I watched it in Berlin.
Yes, that's in the movie.
It's a
It's
good
in
part
the
of it.
movie. Where I was Carlito's Way, which is sort of an okay success. But when I saw it in Berlin at the Berlin Film Festival, I remember I was sitting, you know, right next to the screen. I was looking and I said, I can't make a better picture than this. So I was very disappointed that it wasn't a big hit. So when Ovitz came to me with this going into Mission Impossible, I said, I'm going to make a big hit. You know, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, come on.
But what Ken wanted to know also is our movie.
Yes, this movie, the documentary about you. When they asked you if you were interested in making it, you immediately...
You wanted a hit, so you said.
I went to you guys. Put me back on the map. Well, you explained to me. I mean, it was so informal. It wasn't like, oh, let's make a documentary about Brian. It was, we had all these long, did you go through this, guys? Well, long discussions. We had these many dinners and me telling my stories, blah, blah. So, and Jake and Noah had this camera that they were trying out, this new digital camera. So it was like a camera test. They sort of sat me down and they said, well, let's just get this all down.
It's a nice idea to try.
Yeah, it was like a camera test, right?
Definitely making a movie about it.
See, they all lie.
Let's do a few questions from the audience. And if you can read here and wait for the microphone. On his way.
I mean, I can talk loud.
Yeah, we know that and we appreciate it. Thank you.
I guess, barring you, Mr. De Palma, you guys have now all made movies about filmmakers. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? And for Mr. De Palma, they were talking about your relationship to Hitchcock, and if you could talk a little bit about that as well. Thank you.
I could be here all night talking. Movies about filmmakers?
Well, I mean, all you as well, Mr. Jones, have all made movies about filmmakers. Can you guys just talk about like what it's like to sort of make movies about your idols, or?
I mean, I think in our case, it really does grow out of this thing we're getting to experience in life with Brian. And so he's talking to us very, in a very similar way that he is in the movie, and we recognize that we're sort of blessed to have this experience, and that we sort of like to have it on record initially for us, and then once we started filming it, we realized like this is movie grade, entertainment, electric sort of stuff. So, it comes out of this friendship in terms of knowing that these stories are really valuable. But we sort of idolized Brian starting at a pretty young age, so it's a funny thing to have a relationship, a personal relationship with somebody you admire so much, and his movies could mean so much to you. So it comes from a really personal place. I mean, it's a totally different kind of thing. It's not like directing Brian. You're trying to get him to tell you some of the stories he's told you before dinner or something. You're going to hit that, but you're trying to keep that spirit. And I think that's the thing that makes the movie work the way it does. Is it's right in line with the way it's just the three of us in the room. Like we're working the machinery to make the movie, and it's Brian there in my living room.
And I think Brian knew intuitively that, because we weren't doing second takes of things, we were really just having the conversation and starting from the beginning and going all the way to the present. That Brian knew intuitively, that there was a performance aspect, even though it wasn't a performance, but he had to tell the stories well, like the Carrie story. The timing's great,
And we hadn't heard that one before.
No, and also there was the charade of having to repeat stuff we all knew we had just probably talked about a week ago, that we were just doing it now to have it archivally, but I think it helped obviously that Brian knew what the movie was supposed to be. He wasn't he was in on it, so we were able to kind of craft it together that way.
The only thing I want to say, we're not here to talk about my work, but I do want to say that there's something that Brian says in the movie about directing action sequences, that you always have to know where everybody is, right? And you have to be very, very precise about that and rigorous. And that's something that is almost completely absent from movies now. And that I think that the reason for making films about cinema, like this one, what I was trying to do with my movie is to actually look at the art of cinema at a time when it's not uncommon to go to the movies and see films that are directed by people who look like they've never seen a movie before.
And apropos of that is the crop duster sequence in North by Northwest.
Yeah.
And when God knows how many times I've seen that sequence. And then I'm thinking, I've sort of done sequences like this. And how do you make them work? Well, you've got to show where everything is. And you've got to do it slowly so the audience can orientate themselves to the space. And what's a better example than the crop duster sequence? I mean, and you've got to be able to do it slowly. You have to slow down the pace of the movie. And I said, now, I've sort of done that. I do it on
The Untouchables on the
the
staircase.
Untouchables on the staircase, where you orient people to the space. Ness is over here, the clock's over there, the baby carriage is down there. So And you have to do it very slowly so the audience can sort of figure out where everybody is. I've said this 1,000 times in groups like this, and as Ken says, nobody seems to understand it. You've got to go slow. And it's also in the prom scene in Carrie, I take a tremendous amount of time to show the audience where everybody is. You know, Nancy and Travolta are underneath the stage. Amy's behind the curtain. The board's up there. Carrie's coming here. You know, Betty Buckley's over there, the gym teacher. So, and then you can let everything fly like crazy. But these action sequences today, the big problem is they all are like noise, is because you have no idea the orientation of the space, so it's all bang, somebody fall, bang, somebody crash, you know, and it's just like noise.
Including a certain film from last year shot in Australia on trucks. Yeah. This, somebody's got a microphone.
Okay. Is you?
No, it's right there.
Oh, okay. I was
Sorry.
pointing to someone else.
You have to know where you are. All the time.
You've had a sort of tenuous relationship with critics throughout your career, but you yourself are kind of a great critic. In the documentary, you speak more eloquently about film and other people's films than most people who get paid to extensively discuss film. I was wondering why you never really wrote film criticism, because you're very good at it. I would read it.
I think I did in when I was in graduate school, and then it was so easy to write a bad review. But then I saw, I think it was Saturday night, Sunday morning, and I had to write a good review. I said, this is too hard. No, I mean, what's very helpful with directors being critics of other directors' films, we understand the process. So when I, you know, say to Noah or Jake, you know, I think that sequence is a little longer. I'm not seeing where that guy's, they understand what I'm talking about. You know, they're directors. And when they say the same things about something I'm working on, I get it. You know, it's that whole problem is, you know, writers interviewing writers, painters interviewing painters. And directors should be interviewing directors because they really know what's going on in the director's head because they've done it.
And so as somebody that worked as in your generation with Martin Scorsese, Coppola, and all this, what do you think was your achievement for the cinema, or achievement of your generation for the cinema? Like, beside the first generation, which was great masters like Hitchcock.
Well, I mean, you know, it's like the renaissance of American films. And we were influenced by the European films. And Hollywood's system was breaking down, and we happened to be at the right place at the right time. The studios didn't know what to do. Easy Rider made a hell of a lot of money. It was like the craziest movie made by the craziest guys imaginable. They said, well, let's let this guy. You know, that's how I got to Hollywood. You know, I made Greetings, which were, you know, $20,000. We made $1 million, but some executive at Warner Brothers said, hey, let's get this guy to make our crazy movie with Tommy Smothers. So that's how we were all brought into the system. But the interesting difference is that, you know, when Marty and I and Stephen were in Hollywood, we wanted to take over the system. We wanted to work through the Hollywood system, not these guys. They're not interested in it. They want to make their small movies their way and at low budget so they don't have to deal with what we have to deal with. So that's sort of a big difference of my generation and Jake and Noah's generation. Want to comment on that, man?
We fly to LA and we have a picture I take out Star Wars. You guys don't want to run a studio?
Your films have Mr. Palmer, your films have a visual beauty that is often complemented by some of the best film scores throughout the years. I was wondering, are you often influenced by the music first when you're planning out your films, or do you just let it all happen after it's all been put together?
No, it's no big secret about who were the great film composers. And, I was very fortunate. My first score was Bernard Herrmann, one of the greatest. And I happened to be lucky that he had sort of retired from Hollywood. And I was fortunate enough to bring him back to do Sisters, and then he did Obsession, and then he did Taxi Driver for Martin. So, there are a million Benny Herman stories because he had a volcanic temper. And, and everybody did Benny Herman imitations, including myself. But those great composers, we know who they are. I mean, you listen to the score, Sakamoto, was a great composer, and obviously Morricone, Pino Donaggio. You see these movies, you say, God, who wrote this? and can I get them for my movie? Or when you make a temp track, you use the scores from old movies that you play against yourself, which is what we did for Sisters, and said, is that guy still alive? Unfortunately, he was.
Yes.
Do you see a correlation between the success, the popular success of your movies, and how proud you are with them? Like how happy you are with the final product?
Do you have are you prouder of the successes than of the commercial failures? Are you prouder of the commercial successes than of the failures?
Am I proud of which?
No. Do you see a correlation between how successful a movie is and how proud you are of it?
Not in the case of
that's the false sense of what you're doing that you get in Hollywood. If your movie makes a lot of money, you're a genius. You don't care if it's crap. Everybody tells you, my God, that's great, let's make 10 more of those. And you say, really? And you say, yeah. So, you get false reinforcement. An artist shouldn't sit there and make the same movie over and over again. The only reason you do it is to make money, basically. Are you in this for the dough? No. Sometimes you're very lucky with something like Carrie, which was, was a great book and a very good adaptation, and everything worked. The cast was fantastic, and it was my first huge hit. But sometimes big, expensive movies like Bonfire of Vanities are not a big hit, and you get lacerated by the press because it isn't the book. Fortunately, the book about Bonfire of Vanities was a great book about the whole filmmaking process.
Did you ever think of making a movie about the making of a big budget movie about the filmmaking process in Hollywood?
I don't know, of course you come up with a certain period. I don't know how that would be. Maybe I could discuss my HBO experience.
Okay.
You mentioned it, but certainly one of your most, now, the movie that people talk about, maybe the most, or one of them anyway, is Blowout, which was a huge disappointment when it came out.
Right.
And it's a film of which you're immensely proud, justifiably.
There's a whole funny story about that, because that started as a very small movie, And one day I was in my apartment, and I got a call from John Travolta, and he says, would you read the script? Are you interested in directing? And I read the script, and I wasn't interested in directing. And he said, what are you working on? And I said, well, it's a little movie of a sound guy, and it's kind of a conspiracy. He said, what is it? I said, it's called Personal Effects. And he said, okay, why don't you let me read it? So he read it, and he wanted to do it. Now you got one of the biggest stars in the world wanting to do your little movie. And suddenly, all the executives start seeing dollar signs. They go, John Travolta, Brian De Palma, Personal Effects. Nobody seems to understand that the movie is very unusual with a very downbeat ending. So it starts getting bigger. What started as a very small picture suddenly turned into I guess it was like $15 or $16 million movie. And my producer wound up taking over the company. So we completely ran the shop. I mean, Blowout was it. It was great until we had the first screening for the executives, and I thought they were all going to die. But you've never heard such a silence after that screening. It's a good screen. It's a good screen. And the movie just died.
Yeah. Book got a lot of great press.
Yes, Paul.
But that's also part of the thing you talk about fashion, being judged against the fashion of the day.
But come on, that's a really down ending. Come on. What's the problem with Vertigo? What the hell is it there? What kind of ending was that? The girl goes off the tower twice? You're saying, oh, but I've never seen it when it's in a musical. I said, I can't believe this. The audience had a big film. I shot it never ending.
Yeah, which is on the Blu-ray.
So,
which is even sadder than the other.
Yeah, right.
But that's a truism for directors of an earlier generation, right? Where, like John Ford, if you ask him, that one was a failure. Hitchcock was even like that to a certain extent. Right? Yes, sorry.
In a film, they are talking about that Paul Schrader hands you the script of the Taxi Driver. What element do you find that doesn't work for you, and you hand the script to the Scorsese instead? And I know because you worked with a couple of films prior. You worked with the hero prior to the actually Taxi Driver. The era, so I was curious that what made you decide that?
Well, De Niro wasn't part of the package yet.
No.
Right? There wasn't a package.
Schrader gave me the script because he liked Sisters, he wrote a nice review of it, and we became friends. And he gave me the script, and I remember reading it in the house I was staying at over the Christmas holidays. And it was an extraordinary script, but, I had a picture, sitting on a shelf called Get to Know Your Rabbit. I was trying to make a commercial picture. And I read Taxi Driver, I said, this is insane. How can you make this commercial? I mean, why will anybody go see this? And I gave it to Marty, and he saw something in it. I mean, they never thought it was going to be commercial. Not only when Bob, they had a hard time getting it on. And only when Bob added Godfather 2 was a big star, they said, okay, you can make it, but, do it at a price. Because they never thought it was going to be commercial. And I remember sitting in when they were screening it and trying to cut it down for the violence. That was a nightmare. And Marty finally had to desaturate all the blood so that, it wouldn't get an X. But no, he saw something in it that I didn't. And he made an amazing movie.
Wasn't there a weird moment when that movie was going to be made by Robert Mulligan in LA with Jeff Bridges as the taxi driver? Strange things happen.
That I don't know, because I told Marty that and I gave it to the Phillipses, and they had it for quite a while. Yeah. And the Phillipses were not sold on Marty because they hadn't made a successful movie. I kept them to Alice.
Yeah, Alice was.
And they said, okay, and Bobby was so hot out of Godfather story too. That's, again, it's luck and being at the right place at the right time.
I know you guys have to get downtown, but I really want to thank you for coming. And everybody, please see the movie. And I promise you, when you get to the Cliff Robertson story,